In Formula One, issues burn on high octane. Does the word teammate mean anything? Although Lewis was the better driver, was Nico the bigger man? And with its exorbitant costs, has the sport lost touch with its fans? F1 issues turbocharged, here on The Burning Issue. The colour ignites fire in the blood, and some of F1's greatest drivers have flown the flag. What makes Ferrari so iconic? Of all the names in motorsport, there are none that bring grown men to tears more quickly than Ferrari. Particularly when it comes to the Scuderia, the F1 arm of Ferrari's empire. Even while riding a wave of success with Mercedes, Lewis Hamilton had to acknowledge the lure of the Cavallino Rampante, the prancing horse.
It has some special meaning, obviously, for a driver to one day get to drive a Ferrari.
For all the models of Ferrari that team principal Maurizio Arrivabene has seen in his life, when a new one emerges from under the canvas, it still strikes a deep chord.
It's always a big emotion when you're going to see live a new Ferrari. Either if a GT car or a Formula One car, it's the same emotion.
So why is Ferrari so iconic? Other teams have gone faster plenty of times, but no other car looks like it's going so fast standing still. Founded by Enzo Ferrari in 1939, the constructor has won more world championships than any of its rivals, most prolifically in the glory years at the turn of the century, when Michael Schumacher was untouchable for 5 straight seasons. It's also boasted some of the sport's greatest mavericks, like Ferrari's first ever world champion, Alberto Ascari, the irrepressible Niki Lauda, and Juan Manuel Fangio, even if his golden touch was only with Ferrari for a single season. There's also the modern maestro, Fernando Alonso, who can look cool even in a sombrero, as long as it's red. Ferrari has even had its fictional legends. What other car could stand up next to Tom Selleck's magnificent mustache in the 80s classic TV program, Magnum P.I.? So iconic is the Rosso Corsa, the Ferrari Red, that it spawned this fantasy, Ferrari Land in Tarragona, Spain, complete with a crimson vertical roller coaster to give punters a taste of the G's their heroes experience. Creating Disneyland for petrol heads. Now that's the mark of a true icon. Who put the mate in teammates? It certainly wasn't those F1 fellows. Friction drives the sport. Up next. Even though drivers are generally little guys, good for fitting comfortably into cockpits, F1 is a sport of alpha dogs, high octane equaling high ego. And in the current era, Lewis Hamilton thinks he's top dog. But is his former Mercedes teammate and arch rival, Nico Rosberg, who's renowned for being an exception to the macho rule, actually the bigger man? It's an idea that would make Hamilton grind his teeth. Rosberg, the bigger man? For one, 5 days after the German finally stepped out of Hamilton's shadow and won a world championship, this happened.
It's a very special day today.
of course, as you know, to receive the trophy this evening. It's going to be amazing. But for another reason as well, I want to take the opportunity to announce that I've decided to end my Formula One career in this moment here.
So in other words, he demonstrated to the world he didn't have the chutzpah to defend his title. And we all know there's less pressure on an athlete chasing than on one defending. Hamilton proved he was able to thrive under such pressure, winning back-to-back world championships in 2014 and 2015. Rosberg actually admitted he had no intention of finding the minerals a second time.
I've achieved this childhood dream now, and I'm not willing to do that sort of commitment again for another year.
That's right, all in and then all out. Despite coming second, it made Hamilton look like the real driver, while Rosberg was an F1 all the way to the bone. It's important to note this is no ordinary comparison. Their rivalry was the hottest thing in F1 for years. It really kicked off in 2014 at Spa, when it appeared Rosberg intentionally crashed into his teammate, causing Hamilton a puncture while Rosberg went on to get second and extend his lead in the championship. Hamilton claimed Rosberg did it on purpose, prompting the German to jump on social media to clear the air.
Definitely one of the more difficult video blogs today in the Spa race. Yeah, I've been told what Lewis said in the press and the way he has stated his version of the event. I mean, all I can say is that my view of the events are very different.
Things then began to spiral when Hamilton forced Rosberg off the track in Austin 2015, finally igniting a ruthlessness in the German not seen before. The two crashed into each other 3 times in 2016, in Spain, Canada, then Austria. When it became apparent Rosberg was a genuine threat, Hamilton took every opportunity to remind fans that legacies are built over more than just one season.
He has occasionally been quicker than me on race weekends. That's inevitable as we have so many races. But generally through my career, I've been ahead. So, and I do have the last 2 championships.
By the time Nico won in 2016, any semblance of mateship had been snuffed out. When Hamilton was asked if he'd miss Rosberg when he left, he had this to say.
I don't think I've ever missed a teammate in my life, because generally there's always another one that takes his place.
Which is kind of tragic, because the two were close as kids whilst MBM karting teammates. It was an unlikely bond too. Hamilton born on a council estate in Stevenage. Rosberg, the son of wealthy ex-racing champion Keke. It was a disparity Hamilton used to taunt his friend, he being the kid from the wrong side of the tracks, given the keys to the palace. Susceptible to speeding on French motorways, dating pussycat dolls, and moving to Switzerland to avoid paying tax. Rosberg was the spoon-fed kid who came to be known as Britney, after Britney Spears, thanks to his long, blonde, flowing locks. But in order for us to get the great rivalry, akin to those of Nigel Mansell and Nelson Piquet, Niki Lauda and James Hunt, and Alain Prost and Ayrton Senna, love had to be shared. Rosberg eventually declaring, "I have huge respect for Lewis Hamilton, but we are not best friends." As it stood, when Nico retired in 2016 though, the titles spoke for themselves. Hamilton had claimed bragging rights in 2008, only a year after moving to F1. Then that back-to-back in 2014 and 15, whereas Rosberg had been bridesmaid twice with only the single crown. But despite getting heat for calling it quits so soon, did Rosberg's retirement actually prove he's the bigger man? We have to take into account what he was retiring for. Rosberg admitted that after suffering the pain of defeat yet again in 2015, he put aside everything, including commitments as a father to his young daughter, for an all-out bid for the title.
Every time I was home, she understood that I needed to rest, so I never did any nights to take care of our little daughter, you know. My wife Vivian is also very, very excited. She'll have a husband back, and I'll be a dad again then in the next time, which is going to be wonderful. And yeah, so that's it. Thank you very much for your support as well these years.
Nico is a renowned sweetheart, and this commitment to fatherhood and a life outside the brutal competitive world of F1 makes him a legend. It also took guts to step away from a new $40 million contract and deal with the wrath of Mercedes bosses, who were infuriated he ditched them. So while Hamilton will no doubt go down as the better driver overall, Rosberg is the bigger man. And you know what? Perhaps Rosberg should never have taken Hamilton's cold shoulder to heart. After all, this was the welcome Valtteri Bottas received when he joined Hamilton at Mercedes in 2017.
I don't particularly feel any way. I welcomed him in the message today, and I think that's great for the team. So I'm just focused on doing my job the best way I can.
All's fair in love, war, and Formula One. It's all about topping the podium. And the word teammate means squat. Formula One rivalries can really heat up. F1 has had some cracking rivalries down the years. And the best ones have often been between teammates, forced to grin at the cameras and bear each other's presence while wanting to demolish each other out there on the track. For example, they might have been all fun and games here, doing dancing burnouts at Milton Keynes in 2011. But the rivalry between Red Bull teammates Mark Webber and Sebastian Vettel eventually reached fever pitch. It really was a case of the young buck outshining the older stag from the moment the two began sharing space. Vettel romping in 4 straight world titles from 2010 to 2013. While Webber could only ever manage a 3rd-place title finish in his entire F1 career. There were numerous cases of the German dissing his senior, but the worst came mid-race at the 2013 Malaysian Grand Prix, when Webber was sitting in 1st place with Vettel in 2nd. The two were ordered to hold their positions to the checkered flag, but Vettel broke the pack and overtook Webber on lap 45, going on to claim the win. What followed were the dagger stares of Webber in the press room afterwards, with Vettel's almost sociopathic lack of remorse for his actions. That's just one of the not-so-matey F1 rivalries. Some of the greatest ever drivers get down and dirty after the break. One of F1's most famous rivalries was that of wildman James Hunt and Austrian Niki Lauda. One that reached beyond the confines of die-hard F1 fans, largely due to Hunt's charismatic good-time antics, which often included a sneaky drink before races. Such was his appeal, he's been immortalized in Hollywood movies on more than one occasion. His rivalry with Lauda ramped up in 1976, when Lauda was defending world champion. With both men driving the fastest cars of the year, Lauda led for the first half of the season, with Hunt failing to finish on numerous occasions. Then in August, Lauda crashed at the Nürburgring, nearly losing his life, suffering horrific burns to his face. In one of the greatest ever displays of F1 spirit, Lauda only missed 2 races, returning to finish 4th at Monza. But Hunt found form late in the season, topping the podium twice to put him ahead in the championship, before a 3rd in Fuji saw him claim his only title. Truth is, much of their rivalry was whipped up by the media. Off the track, they were for the most part fine friends. Hunt even said after his 76 victory that he believes Lauda deserved the win for his courage and skill to get back in the cockpit. Another F1 rivalry was that of Ayrton Senna and Michael Schumacher. But it was one cut too short. They clashed for just over 2 years before Senna's death in 1994. But in their short time sharing the grid, their rivalry was hot. In 1992, Schumacher took Senna out on the first lap of the French GP, prompting the statesman to give the young buck a stern talking to. Senna's career stood at 41 victories and 3 world championships. Schumacher eventually surpassed both figures to become the most successful driver ever. While we never saw their battle rage over an era, both drivers were of superhuman quality. But as former F1 rival to both Senna and Schumacher, Johnny Herbert recalls, there was something about the Brazilian that the German lacked.
Back then, there was no data per se. There was a couple of lines, braking lines, maybe a bit of speed, maybe a little bit of movement on the damper and stuff like that. It's very, very basic. And of course, now they know everything that's going on around them. So when you do sort of Michael and Ayrton as the special ones that I've sort of been around, Ayrton was just, had a particular way and aura about it.
That magic that Senna had was reflected in the way he captured the imagination of his Brazilian fans. While Schumacher racked up the better figures, his South American rival had it over him in terms of X Factor. In the years just before his racetrack death, Senna engaged in a bigger and angrier rivalry with Frenchman Alain Prost. The two won 15 of 16 races in 1988 while teammates at McLaren, with Senna taking the title. Prost won the following year, but the Brazilian would have his revenge, world champion back-to-back in 1990 and 91. Thing is, he won his third title by shunting Prost off the track in Japan. That's only a year before he gave Schumacher an earful for taking him out of the 1992 French GP in a similar manner. Memory is conveniently short when it comes to F1 rivalries. Once adored by the masses, now fans aren't so impressed. Has F1 lost touch with the common folk? Has F1 lost its common touch? Well, no, because Formula One has never had a common touch in the first place. For more than 100 years, auto racing has been a rich man's game, a showcase of the most modern, most expensive machinery, a test of the skill and nerve of drivers fated for their daring and paid handsomely for it. A sport requiring big, big money. But if the question is whether F1 has gone too far and is at risk of alienating its traditional fan base, then the answer might very well be yes. In the formative years of F1 after the Second World War, the stars had names like Fangio, Ascari, Brabham and Moss, and motorsport was all about speed and excitement. By the 1970s, with names like Lauda and Hunt, and the 90s with Prost and Senna, F1 had acquired a new buzzword: charisma. But in 2015, the Grand Prix Drivers Association, worried about the direction the sport was taking, conducted an online survey answered by more than 200,000 fans from 194 countries. The respondents were asked to describe Formula One in one word. Coming in first was expensive. Second was technological. And third, but worst of all, was boring. And that was from people interested enough to be on an F1 website. So what can Formula One do to make itself more appealing? They can't reincarnate the enthralling Ayrton Senna or Mr. Charisma himself, James Hunt. And while Niki Lauda is still around, let's face it, the old boy is just a little bit past it now. So somehow they have to find a way to get blokes like Kimi Räikkönen, Stoffel van Dorn, and Pascal Wehrlein to grow a personality. Maybe they should wind Nicky up again after all. Failing that, they have to find another way to make F1 interesting again. The fan survey was done at the height of Mercedes' dominance, with 89% saying F1 needed to be more competitive. Crucial to this is the introduction of budget caps to prevent the power spending of Mercedes and Ferrari, virtually deciding championships in the factory. Mercedes are spending 500 million euros a year on their F1 campaign. A figure the likes of Sauber, Force India and Haas can't hope to match. One of the biggest criticisms was the loss of core elements of racing, like refueling and noise. Yep, it seems everybody wants those cars to burn fuel and pollute the environment with fumes and sound. Guess there's not much hope for those Formula E fellas. As for safety devices like the Halo, forget it. Formula One's history was built on the adrenaline rush that comes with that integral mix of speed and danger, and the fans crave for those days again. As former world champ Jacques Villeneuve put it,
racing and Formula One is the pinnacle of it. It's that simple. It's where you have the best gladiators. It's where, you know, that's the history of human beings, and F1 represents that.
Villeneuve is critical of band-aid solutions like the introduction of DRS to assist drivers overtaking.
All these kind of rule changes to try to create a better show actually create a worse show. That's one part. Then the technology, take the engine. Amazing, beautiful technology for the engineers. It shouldn't be in an F1. It doesn't bring anything. It takes away from F1. You see drivers get out of the car and they didn't even break a sweat because they have to massage their car the whole race and drive within 8 seconds of what they've done in qualifying. It's wrong.
Wrong it might be, but going back is never easy. Any sport whose future is its past is only going backwards, so Formula One has plenty of challenges. So what's the solution? A peek into the future of F1, still to come on The Burning Issue. Here's the world's greatest footballer in action, Cristiano Ronaldo. You saw his goal. Now note the joy of success, the show for the crowd, the strut, the arrogance, the flash in his eye. What about tennis? The anger of David Nalbandian. The humor of Jack Sock. From the stands, you can see the emotions clearly. And golf? When they do something special, they celebrate with the crowd. Now watch Lewis Hamilton in action. See the flash in his eye? The frown when things get tough? The smile when triumph beckons? Of course you don't, because that F1 machine is moving so fast, and you can't see his face behind that helmet. That's F1's biggest problem. But in the future, at least Renault's view of the future, the drivers will be more visible to the fans than ever before. One of the key features of the 2027 concept car, unveiled at the Shanghai Motor Show, was a transparent helmet, which combined with improved camera technology, will enable the driver's face to be seen in the heat of battle. Spectators will also be able to view the telemetry data of the drivers as they sit in the stands or watch at home on television. Renault has predicted a more spectacular show for fans, with LED lighting incorporated into the wheels and moving aero parts, such as the rear wing. It's a future of four-wheel drive, four-wheel steering, And while the cockpit is closed, the other innovations will, in the words of Renault Sport Racing Managing Director Cyril Abiteboul, put the drivers back at the heart of the sport. Cars will be more environment-friendly, providing ultra-high performance on half the fuel of current cars, with full electric mode for the pit lane. Plus, they'll provide safer racing, with an autonomous mode that can activate in case of an accident. The fans might not like all that safety and environment stuff, but it's time they moved on. If not, they can always go watch this.